Welcome to Work Made Easy, where we explore the transformative power of simplicity in driving positive action and unlocking your fullest potential.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Work Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Parthajeet, and I'm thrilled to be here today with a very special guest, John Hoffmire, one of my two co-authors of the book, Work Made Easy. John, it's fantastic to have you on the show.
Thank you, Partha. It's good to be with you.
Listeners, an hour may not be enough to speak about John's achievements. The super short version of that introduction is that Oxford-based John is the chairman of Cadence Innova, a change management consulting firm. When I spent time at Oxford University, John was teaching management in the university, and he was my guru, my guide, and over the years become friends. And this friendship led to us co-authoring the book called Work Made Easy, alongside Raj Krishnamurthy, the CEO of Free Space. John, welcome once again, and thank you for doing this, especially on a day of the week when most others will be out somewhere with their families or just relaxing. And I must ask you this, John, what's your go-to productivity hack? Do you have a secret ritual like sacrificing a cup of coffee to the productivity gods every morning?
I think you're going to find it very surprising how I answer this question. I try to touch every piece of paper and every email that comes to me once. And I realize that some people would say that that leads to my actually answering some emails that I shouldn't. But one of my commitments is to try and treat everybody equally. So if I get an email and it's not spam, I respond, and it's better for me to respond to it right away rather than waiting.
I used to wonder how come you so quickly respond to my emails, and I'm glad that we are doing this as a result of just one single email that I sent you and you quickly agree. So thank you once again, John. It must have been quite a journey for you, John, writing this book with me and another co-author. Is there something that you really enjoyed about collaborating on this project?
It was purely the fact that I got to work with you. It was fun. It was challenging. I learned a lot. But none of those things would have happened in the same way if it wasn't you. So I'm just really grateful that you invited me to write the book with you. And it really was a good experience.
That's very kind of you to say that, John. Really honored to hear that. Besides the good parts, was there any surprising insight that you gained during the writing process about writing itself or about working with me that you say that you liked?
Well, I'm going to actually answer this question in a third way, and this may lead to some other topics that we may want to discuss later. But I was really surprised how quickly AI came into the picture as we were writing the book. I think our assumption had been that the whole metaverse would be at the center of technological change at this point, and artificial intelligence instead has just zoomed ahead. So that surprise is really the most unexpected part of writing the book for me.
Yeah, indeed. And I do remember the different manuscripts that we had. And when I look back, the version that we had at the end of 2022 is quite different from what we have now in the bookstores. By the way, listeners, if you wish to get your hands on a copy of the book released last month, which is called Work Made Easy, you can find it on Amazon. Look for Work Made Easy by John Hoffmire, Raj Krishnamurthy, and Parthajeet Sarma. John, when I think of our listeners listening to this, they might be thinking about authors, wrestling with their ideas like ancient philosophers, Have you ever had a moment during the writing process where you actually felt like you're just one step away from unraveling the mysteries of the universe?
Honestly, no. When I look at writing a book like this, I find myself being fairly humble. So I'm going to compare writing a book of this type to a scientist who might be working on experiments and theory. So if I was a scientist, I could hold a pen up in the air right now, and my theory would be that gravity would have that pen drop. And I would feel with 100% certainty that the pen would drop. As we wrote this book, I didn't ever have a sense that our theory would last forever. And that instead, what I was trying to do was to provide people with a passage to easier work for a period. And I think that the theory and the practice of work and the workplace are going to continue to change and evolve. And I think we all have to be humble about that in ways that lead us to accept those changes.
Indeed. I don't think it'll be right to say that this is the only way to do it. So this is probably one of multiple truths about how the workplace is today. And it just contributes to the bigger dialogue about how the world of workplaces are changing. Let's shift gears a bit. I mean, I've always felt that you have a very unique perspective, and this probably comes because you've been straddling academia at Oxford as well as the business world. And I've always been thinking, like, from your perspective, John, how do you see theory and practice intersecting to shape effective workplace strategies?
The basic theory that I've been working on in business most fully has to do with when employees own a significant part of their business. So my theory and practice has been the theory first, that if people owned their business, they would be more productive, they would be happier, and they would contribute to society in broader ways. From a practical perspective, after I finished my dissertation on this theme of employee ownership, I was a consultant at Bain & Company for 3 years and really helped start a practice in this field. And the laws in the United States kept increasing to such a great degree that it enabled me, a person who had very little real business experience, to start an investment bank. And we did some 2.2 billion US dollars worth of transactions over 7 years, helping employees to buy companies. So my theory and my practice have evolved over time. But as we think about employee-centric workplaces, I think anytime there can also be a form of employee ownership tied in to just the general human resources practices, that you end up with much more effective policies and ways of doing that you would have otherwise if you didn't have any employee ownership.
Do you see employee ownership as a concept becoming more popular after the pandemic, John? I asked this question because the world of work really has changed, and employee centricity has become the go-to work term for a lot of corporates. Do you see any changes over the last 3 years?
Well, because I really am considered to be one of the specialists in the international employee ownership movement, I have a perspective on this. It's probably a little bit different than other people. We started out doing a conference here in Oxford 3 years ago and had 40 people come from 12 countries. Last year, we had 72 people, and they represented 20 countries. This year, we're planning for 100 people in August. And if you're interested in employee ownership and want to come to this conference, Parth can get you my email address. But with 100 people and the expectation of 32 countries represented, we think that we're going to be able to continue the record that we've set so far, which has been that we've actually seen legislation altered in 3 countries as a result of our symposium, the Oxford Employee Ownership Symposium. So I see laws changing. I see more and more workers becoming owners. There are reasons why this will continue. And I'm not sure you want me to go on for too long, so I'll just say 2 other things. One, that it's absolutely clear that inequality is becoming an issue in so many parts of the world that we have to do something to address that. People get wealthy through owning shares. And so having more employees own shares will help us address inequality. We've already talked some about productivity, which is the second quick theme that I wanted to cover. And all you have to do is look at how people treat a house that they own as compared to a house that they rent. I don't think there's much doubt that people take better care of something they own. And I believe that happens with employee ownership.
I think that's very encouraging to hear, John, that the fact that the number of people who come into the conference has been increasing over the years. The other thing that you said, John, just a little while back, you were in a way surprised about how quickly AI became mainstream in organizations. Of course, a lot of people have said to me over the course of the last 3 to 4 weeks, ever since the book came out, that it's a very simple way to understand how AI can be your friend in the workplace. I wanted to ask you, what are the most common misconceptions about AI that people have, and how do you think organizations can actually ensure its responsible and, most importantly, ethical use, John?
So let's talk about the misconceptions first. If you look at almost all types of technology used throughout the history of time, you see people saying, "Oh, this technology is going to put people out of work. We ought not to use it." And and then when you look more seriously at what's actually happened, almost every type of technology that's been introduced to the world has ended up creating whole new professions. Now, maybe AI will be the first technology that really does knock people out of work and doesn't create any new work, and that the net negative will be all somebody thinks about. But but my impression of the world in most movements is that they repeat themselves. And I think that AI will simply create more and more industries, more and more jobs. And then when we look back, there'll be um, a different workplace, a different type of work, but that if people continue to get educated, that in fact what we'll see is that there's an upgrading of work overall. Now, I can make an argument against what I just said, but I actually, for the most part, believe what I just said. If we then turn to the ethical use issue, this is where I worry. And I'm just going to say it as plainly as I can. A lot of companies in the technology space said when they first introduced themselves to the world that we're going to be different. We're going to be the ones that do no evil. And I think when we look at almost all technology companies, they're mostly out for themselves. They want to protect their market share. They want to grow at incredibly fast rates. They want their share prices to be as high as they can. And I think there's going to be need for more regulation around all types of technology issues, not just AI, for us to feel that people are being responsible in the use of these broad technologies, AI in particular.
Thanks for that, John. Like you said, I also hear a lot of people having this fear that we'll be rendered jobless if we have AI coming to the workplace, which is not going to be so. People are going to find new things to do. But having said that, the future of work is a constantly shifting landscape. What advice do you have, John, for our listeners on future proofing their careers, if that is possible at all?
I think you're going to find me to be a simpleton on this particular issue. I meet young people all the time now who believe that when they finish school or if they're in a job and leave a job, that it's going to be easy for them to find either the first work out of school or a new job if they're currently working. My attitude is completely different than theirs. I consider an employed person to have a huge advantage in looking for work. And I find that a student who's actually presently a student has a huge advantage because being a student is like being at work. And so my very simple motto is this: it's easier to find work from work than trying to find work from outside of work. In other words, if you leave being a student, you go from having the job of student to being unemployed. And if you leave your job and become unemployed and try to look for a new job from that position of unemployment, it's just as negative as the student who didn't find a job while still being at a university or some other type of school. So my advice to anybody is don't become unemployed. Stay in jobs, find your work while you're still in school, and you're going to be happier throughout your whole life.
You have such a unique way of thinking through things and a very fascinating way of saying it, John. And that's why I love talking to you over and over again. Let's talk about something which is close to your expertise, which is finance and investment. How do you see the financial implications of implementing hybrid work models for organizations?
When I look at the present situation where people are returning more and more to the workplace, I think this is as a result of just a better overall financial picture for companies when their employees are interacting face to face. I also see that there are certain industries where it's possible to save some money by having people work from home. And the overall picture for the individual employees clearly is that if they don't have to commute, they don't have to spend the time, they don't have to spend the money on a commute, that they're happier. So I see this as sort of a simple battleground where over some period of time, we're going to find that the employees will probably still continue to go back to work in larger and larger numbers in the workplace, and that the hybrid model will look a little bit less hybrid than it does today. But in certain industries, and these are probably specifically technology-oriented fields, I think we will also see that perhaps even a majority of employees at certain companies get to continue to work from home a majority of the time or more.
Do you get a sense that things are easing out a little now, in the sense that I think for about a couple of years after the pandemic ended, a lot of companies that we worked with were kind of saying that we are bleeding because we have to run these offices and we have only about 25% occupancy. And then we also have to pay for people's internet at homes and their electricity bills as well. And this was a bit of a problem for a lot of organizations. But of course, a lot of things have got normalized. What have you heard, John, if you have?
Well, I could speak to this more from a real estate perspective than for the companies that actually rent the real estate. So for the longest time, you were hearing stories of cities like Chicago, where there was all of this open office space. And the rumor was that nobody could turn those into apartments or condominiums. But the most recent stories now are that there is some success in changing old offices into living places. And I think as long as that continues to be successful, the hollowing out of certain cities will diminish, and actually we'll see more people moving back to the inner cities where these offices are turned into apartments and condominiums.
Fascinating, John. I think it's been a very beautiful journey working on this book with you, and having this conversation almost 2.5, 3 years after we started writing this book. When we had the initial ideas, those discussions that I had with you, with Raj, and all three of us getting together. But looking back, John, do you think there is any specific aspect of the future of work you'd like to delve deeper into that was not covered in the book? Because the world of work is changing so fast.
I think we actually did touch on this in the book, but I want to carry the thought forward a little bit. My advice to anybody these days is to develop a technological strength. I think if we went back to the inequality topic that we talked about a little bit, and if we talk about what AI is going to do to the world, the people who will be at disadvantage will be those who don't have technical skills. So my main advice to anybody, and something that I would be interested in writing about to a greater degree in a future book with you, is just how people in a whole variety of fields can push the technological edge in their own training and in their own skills to the point where they actually are adding value in ways that cannot be erased as easily by AI and other technologies. So in some ways, what I would tell anybody is it's better to actually carry the technological sword than be the one who's chopped up by technology by others who are using those swords.
Quite a thought, John. Well, there you have it, folks. A fascinating talk with John Hoffmire. John, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, Partha, thank you for being my friend, and I've enjoyed being with you for this time.
And to all our listeners out there, if you're interested in the book, look for Work Made Easy on Amazon across the world. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more insightful conversations. Until next time, keep working smarter and not harder.
Work Made Easy. The transformative power of simplicity in driving positive action and unlocking your fullest potential.